In 1204, the Venetian fleet invaded and sacked Constantinople, an event so traumatic it's known to this day as the Venetian outrage. But what really happened during that siege? And how did it lead to the creation of history's most dangerous female ruler? You are not prepared for this. The year is 1185. The place is Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. And after decades of civil war, the city has just been handed over to the corrupt and incompetent Emperor Isaac II Angelos. Now, Isaac is actually more interested in satisfying his own needs than ruling the empire. And while he had previously enjoyed consensual relations with both men and women, he now finds himself overcome by a lust for power. And he believes that the key to power is total control over the next emperor, his young son, Alexios. So Isaac embarks on a campaign of murdering anyone who he believes could threaten his power or influence over his son, including Alexios' tutor and even his own brother. But perhaps most shockingly of all, he orders the murder of his wife, the Empress. And then he goes one step further by marrying one of his female courtiers, a former entertainer named Irene, who's rumored to have once prostituted herself in taverns frequented by sailors. This move was shocking to the court because not only was the Empress now dead, but Irene wasn't even a virgin. In fact, rumors suggested that she was the mother of a child born out of wedlock from a previous relationship. But despite the scandal, Isaac publicly declared that he loved Irene more than his own wife. And under Byzantine law, this meant that their marriage was unbreakable. It seemed like nothing could stop Isaac from taking his secret gratification to new heights. That was until a group of disgruntled nobles staged a coup and threw Isaac in prison. Once again, you may expect that the Empress would be there to save the day, but remember, she's already dead. However, thanks to her scandalous past, her brother, a powerful military commander named Alexios, seized the throne. Pretending that he had no part in the coup, Isaac was released from prison and made co-emperor with his son, Alexios III, alongside his new wife, Irene. So yes, despite being married to a man who had tried to kill him, Alexios III was forced to call Isaac his father-in-law. This precarious situation didn't last long, and when Isaac tried to seize full power by blinding Alexios III, the young emperor fled to Venice for protection. There he was welcomed like a conquering hero, and when Venetian merchants heard about the blinding of their imperial client, they sent a fleet to sack Constantinople. What followed is known as the Venetian outrage. Now, although Venice had never before attacked a Christian city, this wasn't exactly a holy crusade. After all, the Doge of Venice was motivated primarily by the chance to loot a wealthy city and get back at the Byzantines for seizing some Venetian merchant ships. On June 1204, the Venetian fleet arrived off the coast of the city and demanded the surrender of Alexios. But when the Byzantines refused, the Republic launched an attack. Despite being outnumbered, the Byzantines fought back bravely and managed to repel the assault. But then something went horribly wrong for them. Although the Venetian fleet had arrived with around 350 ships, the Byzantines were expecting maybe 200, so with thousands of additional soldiers descending on the city, the defense quickly crumbled. By July, the Venetians had entered the city and began looting, raping, and pillaging to their heart's content. It was such a traumatic experience that many people still referred to the Venetian outrage as the first sack of Constantinople. But this disaster was about to get much worse for the Byzantines because Venice was supposed to be honoring a truce at the time. They had pledged to stop fighting after July, which would allow the citizens of Constantinople to evacuate the city and take their valuables with them. But that plan fell apart because the real reason Venice decided to attack Constantinople was to take advantage of the Fourth Crusade. Originally, the Republic had been hired to transport the Crusaders to the Holy Land, but the Venetians betrayed them and took them to Zara instead. And when the Crusaders left, it left the Venetian fleet stranded in the eastern Mediterranean with nothing to do but head to Constantinople. So Venice had literally just used the Crusaders as a Trojan horse to invade and plunder the city. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the Doge of Venice was actually due to meet with Alexios III to negotiate peace when the order to attack was given. That's why the emperor wasn't in the city when the Venetians arrived. He was off trying to make peace. But by the time he got back to Constantinople, the city had been sacked, and he and his family had been blinded and imprisoned. So with the Venetian fleet now occupying the city's treasury and much of its elite class captured and killed, the entire political structure of the Byzantine Empire was ready to collapse. But right when it looked like everything was lost, a 21-year-old woman stepped forward to claim the throne. A woman who had spent her life plotting revenge against her father, Isaac II, and her uncle, Alexios III. Her name was Alexia, daughter of Isaac and niece of Alexios. And although she had been raised as a boy and disguised as a man throughout her life, she was now going to have to embrace her true identity if she wanted any hope of saving the empire. Alexia had always hated the way that her father treated her. From a young age, Isaac had dressed her up as a boy and taught her how to fight and govern. And he even married her to his cousin, a man named Theodosius, so that he could keep her under his thumb. But Alexia hated her forced marriage and her miserable life at court. And after her husband died, she became determined to end her father's reign. Working with her mother, the Empress, she plotted against her father, but ultimately failed. When the Empress was murdered, Alexia was sent away to safety, but her father continued to hunt for her. At one point, he even offered her a noble marriage to a duke in exchange for her submission. But Alexia refused. Instead, she escaped to Hungary, where she lived out the remainder of her childhood in disguise. Upon hearing about the Venetian invasion, Alexia realized that her opportunity had finally come. If she could make nice with the Republic, they might support her claim to the throne. And this is exactly what she did. With the help of a Hungarian king, Alexia approached Venice with a proposal. She promised that if the Republic restored her to the throne, she would reward them handsomely and allow them to keep some of the treasure they looted. And amazingly, this worked. With Venetian support, Alexia returned to Constantinople and took the throne as Alexia I. But she immediately went back on her word and ordered the Venetians arrested and thrown into the sea. But when they refused to leave, she unleashed the Byzantine army on them, killing many and forcing the rest to flee. Once Alexia was secure in power, she began restoring order to the empire and reasserted imperial authority over the provinces. But it was clear that the damage had been done. With the economy and morale shattered, Alexia was never able to fully restore the Byzantine Empire. But nevertheless, she had saved the empire from total destruction. And as a reward for her efforts, she was granted the title new by the grateful citizens of Constantinople. And while Alexia might have kept her word and punished the Venetians for invading the city, she certainly had no problem continuing the tradition of debauchery and corruption set by her father. In fact, she became notorious for hosting wild parties with prostitutes and male lovers, turning the imperial palace into a brothel. And things were about to become even wilder because Alexia also delighted in throwing gold coins from a tower, enjoying the sight of common folk fighting over the riches. In fact, she reportedly said, "Let them fight. The more they fight, the better I am amused." So we can see that while Alexia might have been a skilled ruler, she was certainly no better than her father. And after her death, the Byzantine Empire spiraled into total decline, eventually falling to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. Now, if you thought that was crazy, just wait until you hear what was happening in the courts of Europe. Check out Most Shocking Royal Secrets in European History to learn what disgusting practices were normal in the royal courts of medieval Europe.